Hey guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. What I'm going to be talking about is what would the electoral map look like if Mike Pence faced off against Joe Biden. This was actually suggested by a comment, so if you have your own video suggestions, please make sure to leave them in the comment section below and I will likely get to them. So this scenario likely isn't going to happen as Donald Trump's approval rating has dipped really low and the Senate has looked more like it could go to the Democratic Party. There has been some hypothetical discussion sort of just for fun, not super serious, but I do want to talk about it. I think that it could be a fun map to talk about, and there is some small minutia chance that this could happen. I don't obviously think it's going to happen, but it would be fun to talk about. So that's what we're going to get right into. The first states that I want to talk about are the swing states that aren't exactly swing states, and that is Nevada, Minnesota, and Virginia, as well as New Hampshire. So to characterize these states, they went to Hillary Clinton in 2016, and I think that nationally the map is just looking much stronger for Democrats at this moment. In 2020, Mike Pence is not an exceptional candidate. He probably won't drive turnout in any of these states. If you look at his approval rating, it is higher than Donald Trump's, but it's also dropping as he comes more into the national spotlight, and he is tied to the coronavirus pandemic, definitely mishandling that. He's also heavily tied to the Trump campaign, and Trump is also very unpopular nationwide, which is why he would be considered to not be running in this scenario. So I think that he would not do exceptionally well in these states. They don't have any of the demographics that Pence voters would respond to in high proportions, so they're all going to probably go to the Democratic Party with no problem. Now let's move on to some of these Sunbelt states. I think that Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina would actually all go to the Republican Party. Meanwhile, Arizona and Florida would go to the Democratic Party. And the reason for that is Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina all have an extremely high proportion of evangelical voters living in them. So this means that they are going to respond to Pence's message extremely well, these evangelical voters, and they typically turn out in high rates. So Mike Pence definitely strengthened Donald Trump's ticket, or he is at least said to in that regard, to help with these evangelical voters, and Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina have among the highest proportion of them living in their states than anywhere in the country, so I definitely think that they would help. Meanwhile, Arizona and Florida, they are high minority populations. They have some very high young populations, high suburban populations, and these are all demographics that wouldn't necessarily vote for Mike Pence just because he is such a strict, hardline Republican and has a really dicey history on certain issues that wouldn't necessarily go over well among minority populations, especially Hispanic populations, and also in the suburbs. So I think Arizona, Florida go blue, and then these other Sunbelt states go red. Now let's talk a little bit about the the Rust Belt. So I think we can safely say that Iowa and Ohio would go red in this scenario. And then I think that Wisconsin would be the most competitive. Michigan and Pennsylvania would most likely be leans. And this is because he would be a little more competitive in the Rust Belt just because he has that regional advantage being from Indiana. So in places like Ohio and Wisconsin, I think he would be more competitive. Additionally, in Michigan and Pennsylvania, but I still don't think his message would resonate enough with voters in these states to do exceptionally well in them. In the state of Iowa, it's already leaning more towards the Republican Party than really any of these states are in the region. And I do think that Mike Pence's Midwest branding would help him in a state like Iowa. Additionally, in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. However, I do think that one is ultimately going to go to the Democratic Party just because if you look at polling data right now in the 2nd congressional district, it is definitely more in favor of the Democrats, and I don't think that Mike Pence's regional advantage, in quotation marks, and I'm saying that a lot, would help enough in the 2nd congressional district. And again, I don't think he's that strong of a candidate. He is tied extremely heavily to Trump, so Trump is really unpopular, and he's unpopular because of that. And as he keeps mismanaging the coronavirus pandemic, as cases continue to skyrocket in the US, he's also tied to that, and his approval rating will continue to sink, and he will only get weaker. The last one I'm going to talk about is the Maine 2nd congressional district, and that is probably going to go to the Republican Party. Sorry, not the Democratic Party. This is a district that leans towards the Republican Party, went by an extremely large margins in 2016, only barely went blue in 2018, and I think being a presidential election year, it'll go red again. So this is the map. This is what I think Mike Pence versus Joe Biden would look like. If you have your own video suggestions, please make sure to leave them in the comment section below. Please make sure to like and subscribe also. Thank you so much for watching.